You're listening to the Vonu Podcast, the podcast making you invulnerable to the coercion of the state and the servile society. Visit our website for free resources to aid you in your pursuit of self-liberation, old Vonu publications, podcasts, guest articles, and much more. Go to vonupodcast.com. And now, your hosts, Shane and Jason.
All right, and welcome to the Vonu Podcast, the podcast making you invulnerable to the coercion of the state and the servile society. I'm your host, Shane, coming to you live from the homestead, my Vonu home base here in southern Illinois. This podcast, everything found on the website, is covered by BIPCOT, no government license, so as reuse and modification to anyone except for governments and the agents thereof. Learn more by visiting bipcot.org. So I'm going to take a look at the live stream real quick and just make sure audio levels are coming through okay. And it looks like they are. No dropped frames, which is surprising. I'm on satellite internet here, guys. And, 0.0% drop frames. So that's pretty incredible. Right on. Okay. Well, we'll get to it then. We'll get to it. So this is a live stream, of course. If, please feel free to leave any questions or comments in the live chat. And it looks like we do have some folks here already. Phoenix of Liberty is back. Great to see you. Great to see you here. And it looks like I got another handful of other viewers here as well. So certainly welcome to the Vonu Podcast. So before I bring in my special guest this afternoon, whom you can see on the screen, I have a couple of quick announcements. First off, until January 1st, we're running a 50% off special for our proofreading and editing services over at Liberty Tech Publications. So if you're an author and have a manuscript you've been wanting to get a professional set of eyes on, we'd love to help. On the other hand, if you're a journalist and want another set of eyes on your articles, we can help with that too. Just email me, Shane at libertyunderattack.com, or visit libertyunderattack.com /publish for more information or to schedule a strategy call. You can also check out all of our books at libertyunderattack.com. We have a dozen or so out right now, many of them on Vonu, all of them on self-liberation. So if you dig the content of this podcast, you'll love our publications. If you'd like to get a free few books to sample what we have to offer, just visit libertyunderattack.com and sign up for LUA Publications email updates. Anyway, let's get on with it. On today's intermission episode, I welcome Lily Forrester back to the podcast. On December 9th, just over a year ago, I interviewed John Galton and her at their home in Acapulco, Mexico, right near the end of my month and a half long vacation there. They introduced me to DABS, the carnivore diet, and they reconfirmed what I already knew. Lifestyle changes, whether diet-based or self-liberation-based, are really the most efficacious paths towards personal freedom and just personal development. When I left their house the last time, I think it was a risk game night, actually. I told them both I would be back and then I wouldn't be so broke next time. I mentioned money here as John and Lily were both so generous generous and hospitable, and especially when it came to the meat lunches that Henza and I would go over there and have. So I always enjoyed my time with them, and I knew that I knew then that I was inspired by their story, and I wanted to help out in whatever way that I could. Unfortunately, though, just a couple short months later, John was killed, and Jason Henza, my buddy that I went down to Acapulco with, and to begin with, was shot. Since February, Lily has been rebuilding her life. She's now out of Acapulco, I think, but still in Mexico. So on this very special live stream, we'll get an update on how things have been going. We'll see what she's been up to and whatever else we get to. And, of course, your questions. So, Lily, welcome back to the Vonu Podcast. I'm really, really happy to be chatting with you again. We've been talking a lot over messaging, over Fascist Book Messenger, but it's good to have you back on the podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. I'm forever surrounded by yarn right now, getting ready for Acapulco, but yeah, things are going well. I like where I'm at. I currently live in like a sort of a cabin. There's a giant monarch on the wall, and life's simple, life's good. It's been a long road to get here, though.
Yeah, I can only imagine. We'll certainly talk about that. So I know we talked about your story in our first discussion, and you've discussed it. You discussed it in quite some depth on Thaddeus Russell's podcast. But I'd really like to begin there. Well, I guess first off, we'll just start with a brief introduction. Could you just for those who missed our first conversation, or for those that just don't know who you are, who's Lily Forrester? Who's Lily Forrester? Who are you, and what do you do?
Well, people know me as Lily Forrester, but in reality, I'm not Lily Forrester. I'm somebody else, and I had to pick a new name in Oregon when we were on the run to Mexico. We already knew we were coming to Mexico, and we knew we needed to pick fake names, but I didn't think about it until we landed in Oregon, and some hippie lady was like, "What's your name?" And I was like, "Shit, I'll get back to you." And then, like, a little while later, I came back to her with Lily Forrester, and I actually was made fun of by John for picking that name. It's like, could you pick anything more plant-based? But yeah, realistically, I've been, like, in a lot of ways oppressed by the drug war since birth. My parents met because of weed. My dad was buying weed off of my drug dealer mom. When my mom found out she was pregnant, she was arrested that day for weed possession, and she told my dad as she was getting arrested, "By the way, I'm pregnant." So it's been a deep part of my life since the beginning, and as I became an adult and became an anarchist, it just became even more of a big part of my life. Eventually, we ended up like 5 years, almost 5 years in our relationship. We got arrested and charged with 5 felonies each, all related to cannabis. And we were like, we'd already thought of going to Mexico. At one point, we had like 125 Bitcoin, and we considered going to Cambodia, but Bitcoin was only worth like $100 a coin at that point. So we were like, oh shit, we don't have enough. So we spent it trying to live off grid, and then eventually the arrest happened, and we were both thinking the same thing in the holding cell of, I guess it's time to go to Mexico, which wasn't even really a place we considered heavily. We more considered Southeast Asia heavily because it was far away from the United States, but we figured our best chance in the situation that we were in was Mexico. And my mom being who she was, me going on the run really wasn't much of a stretch because, well, she spent 6 years of my childhood on the run, but in the same state that she was arrested. So we left, and we crossed the border with nothing and made it to Mexico because our friend loaned us the money to get there and drove with us and paid for a place for us to live for the first few months. And it was from that point forward up until the murder a never-ending hustle, which included Acapulco, and that was kind of our way to offer what we thought Acapulco was missing. But yeah, then the murder happened, and it's just been kind of me rebuilding once again, but this time on my own, which has been in some ways exhilarating, but pretty hard for the most part.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess yeah, where to begin here? So I guess I mean I really want to talk start. I guess we'll start with the rebuilding portion because I know after as you said and after John's murder, clearly your entire life changed. The person you went on the run to Mexico with was gone, and now you had to kind of figure things out for yourself. So you began a rebuilding process of sorts. So I mean, obviously, some Vonuans, whether it's this tragic or not, many Vonuans will face they'll face some coercive act, and they'll have to try to rebuild after that. So I guess could you talk a little bit about how things changed and how you even, I guess, began the process of rebuilding your life?
Well, the process of rebuilding was kind of a slow process, although, like, to where I'm at now, I guess it was quick, but it felt slow at the time. But, like, something that was interesting about what happened to me was it wasn't just the loss of a life, it was the loss of everything we worked for, because the cops stole virtually everything I cared about and had worked for over the last 3 years, my dogs included. So I was left with nothing but the clothes that I was wearing, a cell phone with a broken microphone, and that was it. And it was just like trying to deal with that huge monumental loss. Then it was the fact that I made all of my money online, and I had no cameras, I had no computers, I had nothing. Like the computer I used, Henza happened to have, and he told me if I get my computer back, he wants it back, but if not, well, it's mine. Like, well, I'm still using it. My camera now is donated. Most of my rebuilding process in the beginning was due to donations. It was people donating for my legal fund, people donating for me to live and eat and essentially exist until I found a way to start standing up. My first way of actually making money after the murder and bringing in anything was working for Smart Cash. I built the website that I blog from sometimes, not as much as I should, but I built Highly Functional Growth, and I actually approached them because they were Smart Cash sponsors, like, hey, I can write about Smart Cash, make a little money, hopefully, and their response was, why don't we just hire you?
Mm-hmm.
So they did, and I've been working for them ever since. It's been for the better part of this year that I've been working for them. And it's just been a process of snagging other, remote jobs, but I have more difficulty to deal with because I don't have any paperwork. I can't use programs like Upwork and Freelancer.com and Fiverr or any of those because they can't legally pay me because I can't put out my tax information because I am a fugitive. So
Right.
I've been basically relying on my network of friends. I work for you for Liberty Under Attack publications. I help edit this podcast. I write for the Homestead Guru, and I'm helping my friend, sell his silver. And it's basically like any little jobs I can do that make sense, I do them.
Sure.
It's a good thing life is cheap in Mexico because my rent's only $85 a month. So my costs, I spend more on my meat every month than I do on my rent.
Right. So I guess what would have been the most difficult parts, I guess, throughout this process, throughout this rebuilding process, and have there been any parts that you thought would be more difficult that didn't end up be? Could you speak to that?
Well, I mean, there's like the whole thing in some ways has been pretty fucking difficult. Finding work has been difficult, but like when I consider it, in reality, it hasn't been that difficult because like I've been able to support myself for the most part, and when I haven't been able to, I've had friends who have donated to me. So in regards to that, like supporting myself has been easier. Surviving in general has been easier. Staying out of the government's eye has been remarkably easy considering how, I was famous dreadlocked lady, which obviously this is changing. But I expected like dating to be harder, and like I haven't had to go on one bad date because I just kind of determined what I wanted and what I didn't want, and it kind of fell into my lap. And
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part has probably just been dealing with things like PTSD and dealing with things like despair, because it's really easy to tell yourself that your life totally sucks and there's no coming back when you're a fugitive. You just lost everything. You had no money when you lost everything. But yeah, it kind of taught me that I have more community around me than I originally thought.
Yeah. I can certainly understand all of that. Now I have to ask. So you left Acapulco, didn't you? I guess do you miss it at all?
Yeah, I miss it a lot, but I don't miss the climate and I don't miss the cops. Something I realized when I left Acapulco is it's actually like the only place in Mexico that has more cops than Acapulco does is Mexico City. And I left Acapulco for two reasons. One of them was the cops. They saw me, they knew me, they chased me. I fought with them. I bit one of them. Like, it was extremely stressful. So I just had to stay inside in Acapulco, and that wasn't really doing much for my healing. And the other thing was when I did go outside, it was always somebody knew me and was like, where's your esposo, which esposo means husband. And it was just like, so I had to re-explain to everybody like, well, he's dead now. And they'd all look at me like, why are you still here? And I just kind of like, I wasn't getting anywhere in terms of like my emotional healing. It was still just a big fresh open wound, and I still felt like I was in hiding. And
yeah,
because there was like a point where I didn't leave my house for 6 weeks. And that point was probably when I talked to Thaddeus Russell the most. We were texting all day and he was just keeping me sane, like keeping me from losing my mind, convincing me that I needed to leave Acapulco, even though I was kind of refusing in some ways. But yeah, I left. I've traveled around, like, not a whole lot because I can't really afford to, but it's cheap enough in Mexico, and I have friends willing to drive me places to where I've, been able to look around and figure out where I want to live as far as climates and stuff like that. Where I found now is actually a lot colder than Acapulco, and I'm kind of wondering, because within the next 2 months, I'm not sure when, I'm going back for Acapulco, and I'm just wondering how I'm going to handle the heat, because here, like, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm wearing a hoodie. It's cold, like, it's cold in the mornings, and it's cold at night, and it's kind of warm during the days, but, like, it's just a completely different atmosphere. People are completely different. It was just very refreshing, though, getting out of Acapulco, getting to somewhere else, and having people just look at me like I'm a tourist again instead of, holy shit, she's still here. Because that's all I got in Ac. Everybody knew us. Everybody knew us. And then they see me still around, and they expect, something like that to happen, and I go skipping back to the United States, and I don't think most of them understood the fact that I couldn't, even if I wanted to.
Right. Yeah, and I guess you mentioned about Acapulco, and I guess I was maybe in a little bit of denial about it when I was there. But I mean, yeah, Acapulco is definitely a police state. Like there's no doubt about it. I mean, like going from Bonfil up to your place. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of cops there.
So many fucking cops. I was seriously in denial about it, and then I went to Mexico City, and I was like, oh yeah, it's Mexico, there's lots of cops. And then I get to, like, my next landing place, and I was like, where are all the cops? And my friend was basically like, oh, they have a deal with the cartel, and the cartel pays them to stay home. And I was like, oh, so there's, like, no cops here. I could go out, and I could get in a essentially, like, sort of taxi where I could go from my house to the center of town, which was like a 40-minute ride, and I wouldn't see one police officer. And then the police officers I did see in the center of town were doing things like standing outside of banks or directing traffic. There were a lot of cops on bikes there, so, like, I witnessed a car accident once, and then, like, 2 minutes later, I see cops biking down a street coming towards the car accident to help.
Yeah.
That was the kind of thing I was seeing, instead of, like, what you see in Acapulco, which is federal, municipal, tourist police, and military all over the place, all the fucking time. Like,
yeah, it's I don't know, like it's obvious, right? I mean you can't not see it if you're in Acapulco, but yeah, I mean I was in a little bit of denial about it, I think. Yeah, no, it's I obviously not. I was never I was never harassed. Obviously, you've talked about your encounters with police there, but yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot of them.
Like the way we used to justify it was, like, Mexico has, like, a mandatory, because there's especially a lot of military in Acapulco. So Mexico has a lot of, like, it has a mandatory military force, basically. So, like, a lot of people are drafted, but the thing is, Mexico's not at war with anybody, so all of their soldiers are just home walking around. So we just justified it as, oh, they're just, they're showing their force, they're doing all that, but, like, it's not anything to be concerned about. And, like, we were right in regards to the military, but we were getting harassed a lot by federal and municipal police. I got chased in Henza's car. Actually, he freaked out on me a little bit for it. But I got chased driving his car with him in it, just by a cop that had recognized us. I have this video that I only showed to people in person, but it was basically a time when we got chased on the motorcycle, and then the cops tried to steal our motorcycle and tow it, and it was the help of, like, 50 Mexicans that swarmed around the cops and started yelling at them, basically leave them the fuck alone, they're tourists. And they let us go. And that cop saw me that day, and he knew what happened because, well, it was 2 weeks after the murder, and I was driving around, and I was by myself. So he thought I was going to be weak alone, and that I was just going to stop and, do what he wanted alone, and I didn't.
Right.
And I proved him wrong. I think I did send a message, like, I had a couple of close call altercations with the police, but by the time I left, like, I could walk around the city with friends, and then they'd stare at me, but they wouldn't approach me, I think, because they were just like, she's not going to comply.
Right. It's gonna be
Just
more.
leave it
It's
alone.
gonna be more trouble than it's worth. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, since we're on the subject of law enforcement and such, I mean, and you mentioned it a moment ago, I'm sure you saw that the federal tyrants here in the U.S. are considering legalizing cannabis. So I'm curious what your current legal situation is, and if those who falsely imagine themselves to be our rulers, decide to be more benevolent about marijuana. I mean, what legalization might mean for you.
Well, the thing with that bill is I've actually covered that for the Homestead Guru because I wanted to know what the hell they were talking about. The thing with that bill is it does actually, like, it is actually, for a legalization bill, it's a damn good bill and has a surprising amount of support. It's already passed the key committee. But, like, the part that's damn good about it is the point of it is to right the wrongs of the drug war. And, any cases that are still open will be retried, as they put it, and any cases that are closed, the records will be expunged, or that's the idea of it if it's passed. My legal situation is still very shaky. I'm still on the run. I still don't have any papers. I'm still trying to figure that out, which is part of, like, why I got the hell out of Acapulco, away from cops who know that. At least until I look different. I'm hoping they don't recognize me now that I've gotten rid of my dreadlocks, but we'll see. But yeah, it's basically, I'm waiting to see what happens with that, and hopefully at Acapulco and through a job that I might get, I can raise enough money to hire a lawyer back home. My ideal is to just regain my old identity by getting them to drop the charges. Part of my inspiration for this is I'd mentioned my mom, who's been on the run was on the run for 6 years. That ended by her paying a lawyer $3,000, and he just got the charges dropped, saying that she was trying to move on with her life and that she hadn't committed any more crimes and all of that. She didn't even have to go to court because she was afraid to go to court because she was afraid if she walked in, they were going to arrest her.
Right.
So I'm hoping I can find a lawyer who's able to pull that off for me, because, like, my mom's crimes were heroin distribution, something I consider a lot worse than having a bunch of shit that you related to weed that you shouldn't have in your car. But yeah, my long-term plan is hopefully to hire a lawyer, get that fixed, and then find some way to get a passport without going to the United States. I've heard of people who have done that before, and find a way to leave Mexico without being noticed and re-enter legally is my long-term plan. But that's going to take, like, my guess is between $3,000 and $10,000 US, depending on the lawyer and how much he wants to charge me, as well as other things. It's just like, yeah, it's kind of just a waiting game. I've basically been waiting to see what happens with that bill, but it seems like they just voted on the key committee and then are going to leave it on the shelf for a while. So if I make enough money at Acapulco to pay a retainer, I'm going to contact a lawyer and be like, what can be done? How do we fix this? I'm done. Because I'm tired of being on the run. Like, it's being an outlaw in some ways does have its perks, and, like, I inspire a lot of people, but my life is extremely difficult. I have no access to the banking system. I can't travel without worrying about things like deportation, and I'm tired of it, especially because I'm finally building a life that I really enjoy. I don't want to go back to the United States. Yeah, and it's likely, like, if I were to be deported, that I would, my charges would be dropped or my sentence greatly reduced just because of how much time it's been and all of that. But I could also blame all of it on John and they just let me go, but I will have been deported, and the last person I know to have been deported from Mexico, it took him 2.5 years to get back. And I'm not interested in waiting that long.
Right. So you don't want to go back. You don't want to go back to the States. You just want to re-enter Mexico legally. Is that's kind of your plan then? Your long-term
Yeah.
plan? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I want to like find a way to leave Mexico without like getting in trouble for having a visa, or I could pay a lawyer here to get me a visa and then just not have to leave at all. But my whole like point for getting legal so I can have access to the banking system and not have to fear deportation. I don't like I could, get all my charges dropped today and be told I could go home, but I'm not going to because I don't miss the only thing I say this often, the only thing I miss about the United States is the chain of grocery stores Aldi. That's
Really?
it. Couple of people and Aldi.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So I've got a couple messages in chat here. So Phoenix says, sounds like she needs a Darklance. Must have been a little bit ago, but yeah, Darklance. Yeah, the anonymous freelancing platform that I was working on that I wrote the white paper for. That's yeah, on hiatus, but yeah, be nice if it was an option for sure. And Phoenix also asks, ¿Cuántos para los sombreros? So how much is it? How much did
Oh, how
the
much for
hats cost?
it depends on how much like what they're made of, but they're gonna be from like 300 to 600 pesos. Yeah, because like some of them, like the green one that I've shared, is like an alpaca blend, so that one's gonna be more expensive. Where like the black one with the green edge, that one's going to be more like 350 pesos because that's mostly acrylic with like an alpaca edge to it. It just depends on the material that goes into it. But for those who are not coming to Acapulco that still want to buy my crochet things, they can. They just have to wait for realistically when Jason Henza goes back to the United States and ships them, because like that's my current plan for distributing my art without having, because it's like I don't know, $26 for shipping from anywhere in Mexico to the United States for a small package like that. Just a little ridiculous. So it's easier to just wait for Henza and other friends, because I have other friends that go back on a regular basis, and just have them take it with them and ship it when they get over the border for, $2.
Right. Yeah. International shipping is a pain. I've had to. Well, I put up. I guess put it out on Instagram. Yeah. If you guys don't follow me on Instagram, I'm actually pretty active over there. But yeah. I shipped out 2 self-liberation bundles, so like 7 or 8. I guess what was it? 7 or 8 pounds worth of books. To Japan and Canada. It cost I think it was $80 for Japan and $50 for Canada. So yeah, I mean it can be yeah, rather expensive. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it
it's
sounds
a
like
little
you've got some
honest.
resources though. Sounds like you've got some options.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said it before, I'd kind of be nothing without my friends, because I depend on them greatly for everything from like bringing and taking stuff to the United States to driving me around Mexico to loaning me money when I need it. Because my none of my jobs currently are like super reliable, or if they are reliable, they don't cover all my costs. So
Right.
I'm sometimes left scrambling.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I just can't even imagine. I use Bitcoin a lot for LA publications, obviously, but obviously, like I still use PayPal a decent amount. And there are, I guess, a few things it'd be rather difficult to not have PayPal. So yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. Yeah, it's got to be a little difficult.
Yeah, for example, like half of the donations that I got for legal funds were through PayPal, and I had to have other people set up and, do the PayPal stuff for me. Even to this day, like occasionally somebody will be like, "How can I donate to you?" I'm like, "Well, crypto's the easiest," and they're like, "I don't know how to use Bitcoin," and it's
Right.
like, let me find a friend who's close by that has a PayPal that they're willing to let me use.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I guess another thing I want to talk about for a little bit. It's something I've been really looking forward to, especially since I learned about the change of direction, or focus rather, is the Stateless documentary. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, like, I don't necessarily know everything that's going on with the documentary. I do know that they have taken a more of a focus on telling the story of John and I, partially because it is such a big story. I know they're still planning on including, like, the other key characters, at least to the extent to where they're involved with my story, but I think it is, like, at this point they went and they visited my dad and they
Oh,
filmed
really?
him for like 10 hours. Yeah, they went and visited my sister. They went to John's memorial service. They came to Morelia and Pátzcuaro with me for Day of the Dead and filmed that. And from my understanding, they're planning on bringing my dad to Acapulco. They're at least coming to Acapulco to film that. Because, well, it is kind of a full circle thing, because of all the years that I've lived in Acapulco, I've never been invited to speak until this year. I think,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest, the main reason I think they invited me was because of the story, but it was also because if I'm willing to come, then they can still spin the idea that Acapulco is safe. Because if anybody's going to be afraid of coming to the conference, it's me. My main concern, like, the crime in Acapulco has gone a little bit nuts in the last year, but my main concern isn't necessarily the crime, because they do kind of keep tourists out of it. My main concern is getting there without being deported. But yeah, they're still working on the project, but it's partially because, like, in some ways it's become about how I've handled everything and how I'm still surviving, because they could have ended it at the murder, but they're going to have a lot of fans that are like, what the fuck happens next?
Right.
What happened to Lily? So this is their way of covering what happens to me and, sharing the whole story, as well as, like, a lot of people are like, how in the hell, do these two young people make the choice to leave their home country without paperwork, without money, to go to Mexico to restart their lives? Like, what leads to that? And
Right.
It is kind of important to cover that, because most people don't know what it takes, Like, I often say, I don't think I would have taken the life choices that I had if I didn't have my mom. And my mom, is essentially the one who inspired me to think outside of the box and to avoid being caged. And she gave me my healthy mistrust for the cops from a young age. Like, my mom had me trained from the time I was 5 years old on to know what the knock of a cop sounded like compared to the knock of her friends.
Yeah.
And what to do if the cops knocked. It was basically to hit the floor and go and hide somewhere. Most people didn't have that experience, and there are a lot of people also that, like, they desire to live statelessly, but they don't understand the consequences of living statelessly in a world that there are still clearly very powerful states. Anarchy itself is not dangerous, but anarchy, like, in the face of governments and, being online and socially active the way I am, is, there's a danger to that. Like, there's already been a life lost because of it. Like, I still, it's still a very real possibility that I can lose my freedom. And that's, that's all shit that a lot of people don't consider. There's a lot of people out there that are like, I'm #woke. I listen to this person on YouTube. I watch this podcast. I argue with people on Facebook, and I share funny memes. But when it comes to actually living in anarchy, they still pay their taxes. They still apply for their passport, their permission to leave the country. They still get visas when they go to another country. Like, I don't know anybody else that lives the way I do. And I've lost a lot because of the way I live, but I've also learned a lot, and I have a lot more freedom than a lot of people do.
Right.
So it's kind of, it's to show, like, what happens to people when you choose to live in anarchy. A lot of people, like, I've noticed, like, they become a little bit more reserved and a little more hidden. Like Erica Harris, she moved to Belize and she still writes and she still works and she's still doing her thing in Anarchy, but she's not as forward about what she does because I think on some level she realizes that the state considers that to be an enemy. Anybody
Right.
who's actively living against what they tell you to live like is an enemy. I see it on a constant basis in the United States when my friends get arrested for simple things, things
Right.
that you can do here in Mexico just because they don't enforce the laws, we can say that like we should live in anarchy and all we want, but the reality is we don't. We can try and we can try to make our lives more free, but like there's still a state that's going to be breathing down your back, watching you and paying attention for you doing something different and trying to punish you when you do and when you inspire people. There are a lot of friends that theorize that what happened to John was actually a government hit, that it wasn't, like that what Paul was involved, but maybe he was hired by the government to come here and dismantle the community and to make the community lose credibility. And, I've wondered that. I've wondered, did what happened to John and I happen because we were living too free and we were being honest about where we lived and all the things we were doing and our habits, and we were inspiring people to get out of the system? Like, was that just too much for what they wanted? It's something I wonder very, very often. It's part of why I still share a lot about my life, but I don't share where I'm living. When I do go places and share about my travels, I wait until I've left that place for weeks before I share anything that, I saw, because I'm kind of paranoid about it now. I don't know what really happened there. I do know that it was a paid hit, but like behind the scenes, was there a CIA or an FBI like, hey, let's crush these people? Because in a lot of ways they did.
Yeah. That I guess I guess I hadn't thought of that. Hadn't thought of that possibility myself. Yeah, and I guess and it's kind of like here in the States. I mean, like there are plenty of tax evaders, right? Plenty of people that don't pay their taxes. But the people that really get caught and get caught quick are the people that try to explain how to actually, exploit those loopholes. So I think, like it's not just that, you're living extremely free. It's that, I mean, your story, it's not, I mean, your story is inspirational to a lot of people, as you said. So I don't know. That's
Yeah, and
I
we
guess
were
I hadn't really thought of
sharing
that.
it. And I shared everything that I did for 3 years, including police chases, our trip here, all of that. I shared everything as it happened for 2 years. And then it all came to that, that halt. And like one of the big consequences of it was it made a lot of people question their commitment to anarchy. Like, do I really want to be involved in this? Because I could lose my life. Well, they recognize a lot of people are pretty scared individuals. So it's something that's made me wonder, and I get like people contacting me regularly like, hey, do you realize this could be what happened? And I'm like, very much so. That's why I share a lot less about my life. That's why only people that I'm really close to know my location at any one time.
Right.
I'm still living in anarchy. I'm still doing all of it, but I'm just, I think I shared enough about my life to where the story's out there and it inspires people, and people can contact me and I can be like, yeah, I'm still living like this, and that'll inspire them. But the idea of sharing everything as it happens is just like, it kind of makes me sick a little, because I expect to see some, another Paul around the corner. I'm also extremely mistrustful of most people from the United States especially
Sure.
ones that I didn't know before the murder, especially those who are ex-military. I'm extremely mistrustful of their intentions, just because, well, I mean, I learned a big lesson the hard way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am happy. I guess I am happy to hear that. I mean, yeah, you've locked down your security culture. So that's a really good thing to hear. Yeah, I mean, we did Jason Booth and I. This would have been probably I don't know if it was a couple weeks or a month. I don't remember how long after it was, but we did an episode called A Coercionless World is a Utopian Fantasy," and we talked. I guess we kind of just briefly talked about the murder and what happened, but I mean. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, I guess, in some sense, obviously in the servile society, with the fear mongering, people are scared to death of all sorts of things, but most of those things aren't actually real threats. Their threats assessment, their risk assessment, is super flawed. But like the world is, a dangerous place, especially for anarchists. Yes, it's interesting to hear.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter where you live, the United States, Mexico, Africa, everywhere it's kind of dangerous to live the way we do. Everywhere is enacting things like know your customer requirements for exchanging crypto. Like, there are no free places on this planet. And I keep having people ask me if I want to go back to the United States because it's less dangerous. And it's like, look, like, I'm more likely to be randomly shot at a movie theater in the United States than I am to be shot by cartel in Mexico.
Yeah.
Like, tell me how that's safe, Like, my Nana, she told me a story about how a friend of hers, I'm pretty sure, was in Africa, and he was coming back to the United States to be with his family, and his friends were like, are you sure you want to go? The United States is a very dangerous country, Like, there's no place that's safe. It's just about finding a small group of people that you can trust in an area that is relatively quiet and living your own life in a way that doesn't, like, part of what happened, if I'm being honest, is we tried to help the wrong person, somebody that was in a downward spiral, and John insulted his ego by being John, who could insult a lot of people's ego. That was, a lot of people had a love-hate relationship with him because he was very critical, and he died because he couldn't hold back his criticisms, That was part of why Paul was so angry with him, was because he was like, look, you're not living to your ideals, you mooch off of people, you use people, and Paul couldn't handle that, and, well, one thing led to another. At this point, the other big lesson I've learned is just worry about my own life and let other people worry about theirs. It doesn't matter to me at the end of the day if other people follow anarchy. All it matters is how I do it in a way that keeps me safe. That's all I can affect. I think there are too many people out there, like, arguing with people online and arguing with their friends and telling them they're doing shit wrong. And, like, even if you're right, what the fuck does it matter what other people do? How does that affect your life? If it doesn't, then fucking let it go. It's just, life is too goddamn short to fight with people over stupid shit. And I find that I change a lot more minds. Like, a lot of people are like, stick it to the vegans, Lily, with the carnivore diet. And I don't get into fights with vegans. When they try and fight with me, I don't engage. All I do is I share my experiences and I ignore their bullshit. And the unintended effect is I have convinced, without even trying, probably more than 30 vegans and vegetarians to start eating meat again, just by sharing my experiences and not shoving it down their throat. Right. It should tell people something about anything, It's part of why I didn't continue Acapulco, is like, we were trying to get people to do what we wanted, and people were resistant just because, they're lazy, A lot of them don't actually want to live and work in anarchy. And so we ended up doing most of the work. And I was just like, not this year. No thanks. You guys do shit your way. I'm just going to continue to live in anarchy, do the agorism thing, and build the life that I want to live in.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, going back to what we were talking about with, the world being dangerous for anarchists. Well, with a lot of proselytizing and being extremely open with a lot of the views that individual anarchists hold, towards government, military, bludgies, things like that. I mean, this is to folks in the servile society, like it's to a lot of them it's a religion. So if you're always out there on fascist book, or always out there, and physical space and time, trying to convert people, well, it's not hard to piss off to piss off the wrong status to where they could call the bludgies on you and have for a red flag law or something along those lines.
One of the most discouraging things I see is like anarchist people spending days having 700 to 1,000 comment arguments with each other about shit that really doesn't matter. Like, even the flat earth shit, like, I think that's stupid, but, like, I won't argue with people about it because, like, it doesn't really fucking affect our lives one way or the other if the earth is flat. We still have to eat, we still have to, make money and put a roof over our heads and live our fucking lives, raise our kids, raise our animals, whatever we do. Like, I think people are getting stuck too much in circular conversations and discussions and being edgy by arguing with people and proving them wrong on controversial topics, and it's like, it doesn't matter, dude. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, you can subjective morality, who fucking cares? Like, move on with your life. Why don't you go outside and you go and you build something good, like, instead of bitching about it on Facebook? That's probably one of the most annoying things, is people being like, I don't like what this guy's doing or what this guy's talking about, so I'm going to have a 700 comment argument about it instead of going out and using my time to build what I'd actually see.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. But that's kind of the general. Unfortunately, it seems just kind of just how things generally are. People like to do a lot of talking, but not a lot of acting. When it comes to talking about anarchy and advocating for freedom, that's one thing. But when you try to, as I've done since the direct action series, since the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action 3 or 4 years ago, when you try to get them to do something, it's just excuses. So
Anarcapulco in a lot of ways was extremely disappointing, because the idea was great, letting people build the schedule, because everybody's like, oh, I wish I could speak, or oh, I wish I could do a workshop in Anarcapulco, and then like we give them the chance to do it in Anarcapulco, and they're like, tell me what to do, and it's like, we were just so disappointed in people by the end of it. It was just like, why did we even bother? Like, and at this point, like, I just accept that most people don't live like me, and I also accept that I don't need most people to live like me. I just need, my small group of friends that I can trust, that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And then the rest of them can just go pound salt. I'm good. Like, I don't need a big group of people. I have a lot of people that follow my story and stuff like that. But I fully recognize that most of them, when push comes to shove, are not going to stand up for themselves, let alone for me. So I don't put too much faith into it, and I think it saves me a lot of disappointment, because there's not enough action in this community, in the anarchy community. It's all like, let's share some funny memes and let's go to conferences and hang out with each other. But I think a lot of people know that it is really hard, and that you do have a lot of risks. Ross Ulbricht is in prison for life because he anarchied too much.
Yeah.
I don't blame them, and I don't even blame them necessarily, like,
right,
my life is a lot harder than most people's because of what I've done, but yeah, I just I've stopped expecting people to be like me, and that's fine.
Right, and to a certain extent, it's understandable, right? The state, that's what they do. They chill dissent. So it's not surprising at all, especially with people who built up pretty substantial lives in the first realm before they came to these ideas, who have families and things of that nature. Like, I can't even imagine. It's got to be even more difficult. If you've got roots established in the first realm in the servile society. So to a certain extent, yeah, it's certainly understandable. But obviously, if It's kind of like I guess the thing comes to mind is Larkin Rose is the tiny dot. If people really wanted things to change, they could change. But it's the chilling dissent. It's the perception that and obviously the state's a dangerous enemy. Like that's without a doubt. But if people really wanted,
they have more guns.
change,
they have fighter pilots. They got nukes. They've got all this stuff to fight us. And, like, it would take a lot of brave people standing up all at once, because if it's just one person standing up here and there like it has been, well, that person gets bitch slapped around by the state. Larkin spent 3 years in prison. Like, I almost spent a lot of time in prison and now have lost everything I cared about. And there's, the loss of a life because of it. Like, yeah, that's something that I didn't necessarily realize when I got into all of this, was that, like, for anarchy to really work and to take over the world, like, everybody needs to do it at once, not just, like, a couple guys here and there, because it's easy to take down a couple guys here and there. It's real easy.
Right, and I guess this brings to mind something else. I mean, a lot of people see politics as this fucking game, as entertainment. Like some of the folks on Instagram that I come across, who, like, it's all it is about dunking on the left, or making fun of the left. Like that's all it is. It's just fun in games. Like politics is a joke. It's like, no, real people's lives are affected by by the state. Businesses are destroyed. The war on drugs I think it's 1 million people a year get tossed in cages for victimless crimes, for drug crimes. I mean, real people's lives are affected. John was killed. I mean, obviously, if you look back at why you guys were in Mexico to begin with, well, what was the root cause of that? Well, the war on drugs. It was the state. So real people's lives are affected by the state.
That's something most people don't think about, is, like, in the United States, some people's lives are lost, but for the most part, the war on drugs is kind of like a figurative thing. It's kind of just like, it's a philosophical war. But, like, in places like Mexico, the war on drugs is a full-out blood war. It is, people are dying every day over stupid shit because drugs are illegal. Like a couple weeks ago, where I'm living, which apparently this has not happened, at least where I was staying, like, the people have been here for almost 30 years, and this has never happened in the time that they're living here. But one of the big national cartels moved in the middle of the night and wiped out the smaller established cartel in this town. It was over an hour of firefight with automatic machine guns and fucking grenades and all this stuff. Like, just sounded like a war movie. Fairly close. People dying, like, it's not a joke. It's not just this, this political war, as a lot of people say it is in the United States. Like, the only reason this war exists here, it's not because, like, something else to note is, like, there aren't really drug addicts in Mexico. Like, they exist, but, like, it's in terms of epidemics and a lot of the poor being addicted to drugs, that's not a thing at all. It's not. They actually, like, the cartel are known because they don't want that here. They're known to kill people that get too addicted to drugs and get too disorderly over it. All the drugs that are, like, for the drug war violence that happens here, all of that violence has to do with drugs being shipped to the United States because it's fucking illegal to have drugs.
Right.
So all the violence here is happening
as a
direct result of the United States.
Right, like the coca plants themselves might be worth like $700 for a kilo. I don't know the prices or the amounts, but just tossing out a random $700 a kilo in Colombia, or in Mexico. But whenever they get transported over the border, the price just skyrockets. So it makes perfect sense, from an economic perspective. It's all because of the illegal market.
It's all because of the risk It's all because of the risk involved in moving it into the country and throughout the country. That's the only reason. If there was no risk, like if you could just sell Coke from your pharmacy the way it used to be, there would be no risk. It would be cheap as hell, and it wouldn't be the same system. And there also wouldn't be as much usage, because part of the reason that drugs are so used in the United States is they're stigmatized. They're like this taboo thing. And, well, humans and their taboos, they love them.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's definitely true. Yeah, I guess I didn't expect that conversation, but I'm glad we had it. I'm glad we had it because I mean that's one of my biggest frustrations is I hate when people just think that it's all about like and this I don't see this a whole lot in anarchist circles per se, but like especially on like especially on the right, some of these younger conservatives, politics is a game, it's just entertainment, but no, real people's lives are affected. I mean, it's a dangerous world. It certainly is. So, I guess where to go now? Go check back in chat. Looks like we got some messages there. Phoenix asked, "What's the exchange rate for pesos to FRNs? Isn't it 20 pesos per dollar? Is it still around there?
It's like it fluctuates between 17 and 19. It's been a while since it's been 20. Currently, I think like most banks will exchange for like 1890 is what they have listed on their little bank board for US dollars.
Okay, gotcha. Here's another question. Lily, what do you think about Larkin's Candles in the Dark?
I like the idea of it, but it's one of those things where like he's just one man and he can only have so many events, and like the whole thing is about learning how to talk to statists, and I guess I'd have to attend it to be able to have more of an opinion on it, but I mean, I'm not one of those anarchists that's like, you got to go out there and you got to do outreach and you got to get statists converted, because I just don't give a shit. And I've converted plenty of people. Like, I've woken a lot of people up. I have people message me nearly daily like, hey, you woke me up to the horrors of drug war. You woke me up to this. You woke me up to that. And, like, most of the time it's people I've never talked to. Like,
right.
My experience, the real change doesn't come from conversations with people. Most of the time when I've tried to have conversations with people, even when I'm just trying to have, like, friendly discussions, they don't take you seriously. They don't take you seriously until you're living it. Like, for example, my sister, she didn't take me seriously on everything from, like, circumcision to taxes to the government until I disappeared from her life for a few years, went and really lived it, and then came back and had, all these experiences to show her how things really are. And yeah, same with my dad. He didn't take me seriously at all on any of this, whereas at this point he understands, the stuff that I was trying to get him to be aware of. And those are people that were open-minded to anarchy and voluntarism. I'm not convinced that talking to people either online or in person is, like, the most influential things about Larkin Rose for me, because he influenced the hell out of me and is a big part of why I'm an anarchist, but the reason, like, he inspired me was I listened to, like, this 3-hour podcast with him and Jan Irvin where he talked about what he went through as far as the tax thing was. Like, most people just think he's an author who's sitting there bitching about Trump on Twitter. But, like, what got me to really respect Larkin Rose is his resistance to the tax system and the consequences of it.
Yeah.
That was what got me to wake up a little bit, Another example that isn't Larkin of that sort of thing is I credit Derek J. Freeman a lot with being why I became an anarchist, and he is because when I was 18, I watched Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree on YouTube.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, there, that's, that is it, he wasn't sitting there telling us shit, he was showing us what silly stuff he was doing and the sort of opposition he was getting for it. That was the stuff that I've noticed really gets people to pay attention. It's never like, some people it's the philosophical stuff, but for the grand majority of people, for regular people, it's not you sitting there talking to them, it's you sitting there existing in a certain way and them observing, what happens.
Right.
I have a lot of people who are, they follow me just to see what happens because, I'm still doing what I'm doing and being who I am. Not much has changed other than where I'm living and in a lot of ways who I spend my time with, but, you know, my actions are still the same. I still get paid in Bitcoin. I still advocate for cryptocurrency. I just, you know, I'm just not convinced, like, and I think there is a second wave of anarchism, because the first wave of anarchism is what I call the talking heads. It's the people on YouTube like, you know, taxes are wrong and the Federal Reserve is wrong and here's why. Whereas that got, you know, a lot of people to pay attention, but if we want the masses to truly pay attention, we need people out there like, here's how I'm actually living in anarchy. Here's how I live off of crypto.
Yep.
You know, here's how I do this. Here's, you know, how I make my money. Here's how I'm an entrepreneur. You know, it's real world examples. That's part of why the carnivore diet has gotten so popular and why I originally tried it. It wasn't like, oh, the science is sound and it makes sense because that's what our ancestors ate. It was all the people on Instagram who are like, hey, I healed this, I fixed this, I had chronic arthritis, now I have no pain. You know, it was all of the actual experiences.
Right. I didn't understand the science until I was actually on it for like 2 or 3 months. So, or at least understand some of the science behind it. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, the big world changing ideas that are actually taking hold and really changing people's lives are the ones where, like, the people pushing it are just like, these are my experiences. This is how it's changed my life. And, like, oftentimes you can see a clear difference, or you can see the beauty in what they do, and that's what changes the world. It's not like, oh, God damn it, the United States is oppressing these people again. Oh, man, another innocent man shot by cops. Like, yeah, we know that's happening. Let's talk about a solution and put them into action and talk about what happens there. You know, like the Bundys, they woke a lot of people up because they actively resisted, and then they got squashed for it in some ways, and people were like, oh, that's not okay. You know, it wasn't the majority of these talking heads on YouTube like, the government is oppressive and has been forever. Like, yeah, we know that, you know, and on some level, most people know that. But it's like, the one thing that I was like, when I first became an anarchist, is like, I determined I was an anarchist, and I basically turned to John and was like, now what? Life sucks. The government hates us and is out to get us. How do we continue? How do we build, how do we live life in a way that's actually enjoyable? Like, what now? Like, too many of these people are just like, yeah, this all fucking sucks. This is awful. This is awful. This is awful. Look at this terrible meme. Oh, man, another kid killed. Or, oh, man, this happened. And it's like, but where's the solutions?
Right. Yep. I'm right there with you. And it's good to hear someone else say these things other than me. Yeah, I'm glad that's and I have been seeing it over the past year or two. Obviously it hasn't been thousands of people, but you know, I've seen individuals pursue, Vonu lifestyles. I've seen them, make these radical lifestyle changes in pursuance of freedom and actually, living in anarchy and pursuing that increased personal freedom. So I think it's happening, but very slowly.
Second wave. Yeah, I think that's why I call it the second wave, because, the first wave people, it got people interested in anarchy to a point to where they were like, okay, I'll at least listen to you because listening to you on YouTube isn't going to risk my life. And then now there's enough people that are like, all right, I've had it with taxes. I've had it with the US dollar. I've had it with, United States cops. So you've got, there are a lot more people out there. And then the first wave of these doers, as I call them, which I guess I'm part of that, are going to inspire the next people like, hey, it can be hard, but it's worth it. And after that, it's just, if everything, goes right, then it'll just be a situation that's hard to stop. Because everybody, when Bitcoin came out, I heard a lot of theory, yeah, the state is done for. And then it's like, okay, but everybody was too busy talking to each other on YouTube and not actually living it and using it. So now there's a bunch of KYC requirements, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is way harder to use than it was in 2011, 2012 when I got involved. Mm-hmm. So none of these solutions like are going to be viable if people don't actually start using them. You know, people just theorize about it. Like, if I had a fucking dollar for every person I saw on Facebook talking about the pros of cryptocurrency that doesn't actually use it, I would be fucking rich. Oh yeah, Bitcoin's here to save the day. Do you have any Bitcoin? Well, no, I've never bought Bitcoin. Or I've never worked for Bitcoin. And it's like, okay, how is it going to save the day if nobody uses it? Or if it becomes, like Bitcoin specifically, it's become so hard to use that, like, there are way less, like, merchants that accept Bitcoin now than there were 10 fucking years ago. Like, what the fuck? You know, we're supposed to gain more adoption, but no, everybody's too busy fighting over philosophical bullshit about lightning networks and all this stuff. And it's like, I mean, just fucking pick something and do something with it, or else we're going to lose our solution. And, you know, you see people like Roger Ver trying to do that with Bitcoin Cash, and it's just like, and people hate on him for it because they're like, oh, he hates on Bitcoin. Well, he's hating on Bitcoin because it has some serious problems. It shouldn't take like 3 hours to send a cryptocurrency transaction. You shouldn't have to spend, like, there was a point recently where I had to spend like $7 to send a Bitcoin transaction, and it still took a fucking day. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be. How is that better than PayPal? It's actually worse than PayPal because you have to buy the Bitcoin and then send it and then wait the same amount of time and pay the same fucking fees. What's the point? But, like, yeah, people are too afraid to risk things. You know, John, like, when we got into cryptocurrency, he bought his first coins at $9 a coin using student loan money. Who else did that? I don't know anybody else who did that. I bought my first coin at $35 a coin using my tax return, basically. People are too afraid to risk what they have to help make this sphere better, but they're all just like, somebody oughta. It's like, well, you happen to be somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I disagree. I disagree a little bit on the Bitcoin. I guess on the Bitcoin thing. Yeah, obviously since you edit the podcast and you'll listen to the one with Max Hillebrand as well. But that's okay. Reasonable people disagree on things and it's okay. The most important thing is that, you know, we're both focused on action. See, like, I don't care if I don't care what the action is, as long as you know, they pursue it and it's consistent with Vonu, consistent with freedom, those sorts of things. But looks like we've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes here, and yeah, do want to respect your time. Let me see here if there's anything else I wanted to cover. You mentioned the carnivore diets. Yeah, we talked about the Stateless documentary. I guess let's talk a little bit about. You mentioned some of the things that you do for work, but people want to hire you. What are some of the skills and services you offer? If people want to donate to you and help support you, how can they do that?
Well, the services I offer are, like, pretty broad. I have a lot of different skills, because I'm, you know, I mean, some people call it ADD, but I get bored very quickly of what I'm doing. So, like, if through any given day, I do, like, so many different things, from, you know, cooking to writing to editing photos and taking photos to crochet to sewing to, like, pretty much anything I can. So long as it's, you know, somewhat in line with my beliefs. Like, recently, as you obviously know, I've started the podcast editing thing, which is a lot of fun, but it's also something that I didn't do before. So I'm quick to learn things, but the main things I do are, like, writing, I do transcription, I do editing and proofreading. I make all sorts of crafts. I'm going to be, as soon as I can afford the glass, I'll be glass blowing again. I've cooked in the past. I'll probably have a meetup at Anarcapulco during Anarcapulco at some point, you know, to do some smart cash outreach. I do promotion. I do social media management. It's pretty much, like, anything that can be done remotely, or, like, you know, if people are willing to wait a few months to have something shipped to them in the United States, like, I can do pretty much anything. So far, the only thing that I don't really do and that I don't really venture into is sex work. Like, I'm not really... I've had some people ask for photos and stuff, and I respect the institution of sex work, but I have zero interest in being involved myself.
Sure.
I'd rather find other ways to make money. It doesn't interest me. And that's fine for me. But yeah, I do pretty much anything. Hopefully soon I'll be doing some customer service for a cryptocurrency wallet. And if I do that, then I'll be making more than enough money to handle my legal situation and everything all in Bitcoin. But that's something I'm basically waiting on. But yeah, hiring me, you can contact me either via Facebook or you can contact me through my website, highlyfunctionalgrowth.com. There's like a contact form on there. There's also a donate page where you can donate to my cryptocurrency addresses. If you don't use cryptocurrency and use like PayPal or something, I have friends that I can have received the donations and they either send me the cryptocurrency or give me the cash depending on which friend I use. But yeah, that's pretty much it at this point. At Acapulco, I'll be, they're accepting donations. I'll ask for them during my speech for anybody that wants to help me get off the run. Anybody can come up to me afterwards and get my address and send me a little bit of crypto, or they can hand me cash if they want to, whatever, and anything that I make from that. And if people are interested in going to Acapulco, I'm an affiliate, and any of the money that I make as an affiliate is either going to go to getting me started glass blowing again or getting me legal, whichever seems more, helpful at the time. I might just, spend a couple $100 on glass and then worry about the legal stuff. Or I might just, if I find a lawyer that's like, I can get rid of this, I just need this amount of money, that all is just going to go to legal fund, because I'm tired of having I'd rather live in anarchy while still being able to travel without fear of being put in a cage. Especially because I have drastically changed my lifestyle. Like, I don't take nearly the risks that I used to. I don't most people don't know this, but it's been like a month since I've even smoked any cannabis, mostly as an experiment, but mostly for budget, and mostly because I don't want to be involved with the cartel system at all, even for buying cannabis at this point. I don't want to be connected with it. I'm trying to make my life a little bit safer.
Sure.
A little less risky, easier to sleep at night. But
right.
Yeah, basically, contact me if you want to find some way to support my efforts. I know some people are a little worried about just sending money. I've had my glass blowing setup was donated, and the guy knew that money went towards that because he paid for it and had it shipped. People could do the same. Like if somebody wanted to sponsor me for glass blowing, they could buy the glass and have it sent, and I can have it brought over. That's an option too. That way they know it's going towards what I tell them. Because yeah, I don't have anything else to spend the money on, but I know that a lot of people are like, how do I know? There have been a lot of scams in this community of people collecting money for donations and that money just going towards everything from drugs to travel. And that's not, It's not what I'm trying to do here. Genuinely trying to rebuild, genuinely trying to free up my life a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, and certainly, yeah, I'd highly recommend hiring Lily. Like as she said, she does some proofreading, editing work for me. She edits the podcast now, which she didn't do that before. But yeah, she figured it out. First episode came out great. So she's certainly recommend hiring her and supporting her however you can. And do you want to plug your website one more time?
I think the sound cut out. I can't hear you anymore if you're talking.
Oh, that's not good.
Okay.
Coming through now?
Yeah, you had a connection problem, or I did, or one of us. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a connection problem.
All right, no worries. Well, if you can hear me now, do you want to go ahead and plug your website one more time for the listeners? Well, I guess this is a good time for connection issues. Okay. Skype is reconnecting. So yeah, good time for connection issues here. since we're right at the end of the podcast or the live stream. Did we get you back, Lily? I guess not. I guess not. But yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap up here. I don't think got her back yet. So yeah, the website, her website is highlyfunctionalgrowth.com. You can go there, learn about all her services if you want to support her, all that good stuff. And looks like might have her. Nope, don't think so. Do not think so. Anyway, yep, highlyfunctionalgrowth.com. I'll put all of those links in the show notes. When Lily listens to this and edits it, thanks a lot for coming on. Sure do appreciate it. And thank you guys for tuning in. Let me take one more look at the live chat here. Phoenix of Liberty, talk to Ernie Hancock at Acapulco about getting in touch with Mark J. Victor. He is an attorney who works with activists. Okay, I'll make sure to pass that along to her. Yeah, that's valuable tip. Thank you, Phoenix of Liberty. I sure do appreciate that. So, yeah, that's all I have for you. If you do want to support my work, Libertarian Type Publications is the best way to do that. And I will mention, as we talked about already, if you do use us for proofreading and editing services, we do have a special going on until January 1st, 50% off. If you do hire Lily, or if you do hire us, then there's a very good chance that you'll be supporting Lily indirectly as well. So, if you want to check out our books, libertarianattack.com. If you want to take 10% off your order, use coupon code SELFLIBERATE. Would certainly recommend the Self-Liberation Bundle. Try to make the books as cheap as possible, and that one you can get all dozen of them for I think it's $85. So it comes out very cheap per book, especially compared to the individual the individual book costs. So thanks a lot for tuning in, guys, and until next time. I'm trying to think of what the next episode, the next live stream will be. I'm actually not 100% sure, but I'm back in the routine of podcasting, back in the routine of live streaming. Whatever the next one is, hope to see you guys there. And until next time, let's build the Agora and let's build Second Realms.